Folks, welcome to a new batch of hobby nightmares. In this episode, we have two big old stories for you. The first one is about an ignorant hobbyist who is confronted by his own smell at the Games Workshop store, and the second is a Games Workshop manager's, diatribe as he exposes his own ridiculous rules that he uses in store to keep gaming away. So, should be very interesting. Let's jump in, shall we? Vagabond says... Nice name, actually, Vagabond. Hello, North. You can call me Vagabond. I have done, yes. I am a super listener of the channel. Good for you, man of culture. Good. And fairly new to the hobby. I am currently about 2,000 points deep in Unpainted Salamanders, Custodes, and a Leviathan box set, and got started collecting in the twilight hours of 9th edition. Of those of you in the comment section, by the way, have you started building your Leviathan box set yet? What was your experience like? I'm going to start doing it pretty soon on my own one, so let me know what your experience was like and what your favourite part of it was. Carrying on. I haven't had an overly steep income since mid-pandemic due to a temporary career change for mental health's sake. I don't exactly have deep savings and I don't come from money, so if you're wondering how someone like myself could afford to be this deep into plastic crack so quickly, it's because my father-in-law, who I will call Glenn, is a co-owner of the literal largest hobby/board game store, not just in Canada, but the world. And I get a fairly steep family discount, and my story actually stems from the reason I get said discount, my lovely wife. This guy's playing 4D chess. My god, this guy just went, I can't afford this hobby anymore. Do I leave the hobby? No. I go and find the biggest hobby retailer in the world, the biggest single entity store in the world. I'm going to find that guy's daughter and nail her to a wall. That's what I'm going to do. I'm going to slap a ring on it, make sure she's well looked after, and then I'm going to have models for the... Dude, this guy just... Why are you writing into me? Like, you should be giving me advice. What's going on? Anyway. I wouldn't call any of our experiences at the shop nightmares, but definitely kind of entertaining. One story that sticks out fairly well in my mind is a fairly decent example of the stereotype that nerds do not know how to interact with women. And usually wildly overcompensate with the exaggerated personality traits, or just bungle the interaction as much as humanly possible. At this point in history, a few years pre-COVID, my wife was still my girlfriend. You're still putting in the groundwork. Good on you, son. Good on you, son. Treat her right, you know. Be honest now. Be honest. If you're driving or doing something, maybe pull over and ask you this. Has she ever really got on your nerves, right? You know. And you're like, oh, just... You know, and you just want to act out. And you don't, because you think, you know what? You take one look at your pile of models and you go, do you know what? Nah, it's all good. I'll just get on with life, it's fine. Has that ever happened? I don't know, I'm curious. Anyway. Alright. At this point in history, a few years pre-COVID, my wife was still my girlfriend, and her parents had split up. And both her and my now father-in-law were living roughly an hour north of town. As we were not moved into our own place yet, so if she wanted to link up with me, she either had to come into town and wait in her dad's office for me to pick her up, or hang out later in the evening until I was off work. And she would come spend this weekend with me, as it was easier than me making a 2-hour round trip for a daily hangout, and an additional 2 hours to drop her off at the day's end. Well, she seems very understanding, which is good. You got a good one. This specific evening, my wife was hanging around after regular store hours and into reserved table time, which is more often than not packed to the gills with 30 plus tables of various games and activities. Being bored out of her skull waiting for me, my wife popped down from the office to shoot the breeze with some of the female staff and stretch her legs. She walked around the board game section, scouting out anything interesting for a potential purchase, and then headed to the front desk for a chat. Midway into her conversation, some loud thumping could be heard coming from the steps, and one of the larger patrons, both vertically and horizontally, who was there for some group painting, came down, rummaged through the paints for a bit, and then approached the counter. Now, the conversation my wife and the staff were having was nothing too spectacular. At that point, it was actually about a lack of cleaning supplies in the washroom that no one else seemed to feel the need to be brought up to the owners or management, and this particular staff member hadn't been able to get the time to chat with anybody outside of other staff due to having her late shift. And she had some suggestions on how to improve and streamline the process of cleaning the washroom itself and collect the various trash bins throughout the store, which at the time few staff members willingly did without prodding from management. Regardless of the conversation, my wife acknowledged that a customer was looking for some service. She excused herself and took a big step to the side and gestured to the till with a smile, letting the man make his purchase. Now, I feel the correct response to this on his part would have been a quick thank you and stepping up to the till, paying for his goods and anything else he needed from the till. Instead, Buddy rolled a natural 1 on a charisma check and opted to scoff and sneer with an eyebrow raised as he stepped up to the till, eyeing my wife up and down a bit, turning to the staff member and said, yeah, why not, instead of chatting with some window shopper, you focus on dealing with real customers instead? Grab me a pack of soda and some chocolate bars for the table as well, okay? And he started plopping his purchases down on the table, which seemed to be a table-wide restock on paint, green stuff and other office supplies. My wife is far and away not an imposing figure, and never really has been physically. At a dizzyingly tall 5'4" and 115 pounds at the time, this guy had close to a foot on her and more than double her weight. But being the true spitfire she is, she definitely didn't just shy away, but also remained respectful enough. She crossed her arms, threw an eyebrow and tapped a finger on her arm, trying her best to bite her tongue. Fortunately, she didn't have to, as it was the staff member who came to the rescue. Well, customer's name here, I'm going to call him Bill. Well, Bill, I don't know if I can really call her a window shopper per se, considering her father basically owns half of literally everything in the store, she said to him, cold as ice, as he turned to get his behind-the-counter purchases. He apparently stopped dead, hovering a full hand of paint pot over the counter as he froze. The staff member turned back to face him, placed a pack of soda on the counter and said, yeah, she's Glenn's daughter. We were just discussing how better to clean up the store after a day of being this busy, as folks like you tend to not help by making basic contributions to prevent undesirable odours. Clearly ribbing him and his smell. Oh my god. Oh my god, that's merciless, dude. That's bloody merciless. She just gone in there, she stuck the blade in, and didn't just take it out, she twisted and pulled it out. Oh my god. He placed down his paint pots, slowly turned his face to my wife, and cracked the kind of smile that makes you know you've been screwed up big. The way it's written is all jumbled up and out of sync in this sentence. So, he slowly turned his head back to my wife and cracked the kind of smile one makes when you know you've screwed up big time and started to get an apology hissed through your teeth. Before he could, my wife eyed him up and down the same way he had her and shot back with a, Bill, what is it? I'll be sure to let my dad know that you and your table made quite the serious purchase today. Thank you for your patronage. And don't worry about what she said. I plan to suggest they start stocking cards and sticks of deodorant behind the counter as well fairly soon. With all the thinly veiled venom of the world's cobra population. At that, he quickly shrank back, hurriedly put the rest of his purchase on the counter, paid, and swept it all into a basket to carry back to his table, along with his snacks and drinks. My wife glared at him the whole time, while he hurried up the stairs and disappeared around the corner. Once he was out of eyesight, both her and the staff member had a bit of a laugh, finished their conversation, and she headed back up to the office with a drink and a bag of popcorn they sold behind the counter to wait for me to come pick her up. I was there not 20 minutes later and thought it was weird she had paused to wave at the table of guys as we left, until she regaled me with the story of the encounter with Bill on the way back to my place. Needless to say, I found it highly entertaining, and she never even mentioned the guy to her dad, figuring the embarrassment of the evening was less than enough to treat others with an ounce of respect and decency, regardless of gender or who you might think they might be. Anyway, thanks for reading my little tale. If this makes it onto a show, I'd like to shout out to my buddy who got me into this addictive as hell hobby, Shasha Kavastivar on Twitch and Instagram. I will never forget them for their addiction they have thrust upon me, and now I'm off to work my way through your video catalogue. Cheers, man. Keep your head up and your stick down, Vagabond. Cheers. I think quite naturally that this is a nerd who is who has gone through the ringer with women. Do you know what I mean? And seems to think that they're invading his space. Do you know what I mean? You do get guys like this in every single nerdy space, and that they think this is their territory. You know what I mean? You're here on their time, so you know, screw you if you don't want to deal with them. You are there on their time, and essentially, if they've had a bad experience with women, or if they've not had any attention from women, they will act out in similar ways. Now, those of you who know me know I am not a bleeding heart. I am not somebody who goes against men nearly at all, ever. But I call out shitty behaviour when I see it. But I also like to look for the reasons behind said shitty behaviour. Right? That's where I think this comes from. This phenomenon of nerds speaking to women mainly like shit. This is where I think it comes from. It comes from the fact that a lot of them have had bad experiences with women, and they look at you as infiltrators and people who shouldn't be here. That's wrong, of course, but it's still how they look at it. Because they've been mistreated their whole lives, and most of the cool girls I know in the hobby look at that with disdain and roll their eyes and carry on with what they're doing, because mainly they realise where it's coming from, you know? It is what it is. A reaction such as this is spot on. Right? She literally put him in his place and moved on with her day. Didn't make his life a living hell. Didn't complain about him to management. Didn't try and, you know, smear his name or ruin his life or whatever. Just gave him short shrift and moved on. If he does it again, then you take it to the next level, of course. But there we go. That's why I think it happens, you know. Doesn't excuse it, but it is what it is. Attica Bob says, "Hey North. Firstly, thanks for all you do on the channel. It really is a blast after a hard day to listen to these on the drive home. I'll try not to crash the car if you read this one out. It's not especially a long one, but it is something I've been waiting to talk about for a long time. There was a hobby nightmare a few weeks ago, maybe a month, where you talked about another Games Workshop manager and their shutting down of the campaign in their store when they arrived. Whilst that guy was very overt with the way he went about it, I have to say mine had no such qualms. So, my local Games Workshop was a good place, full of cheer, run by a manager named Dave. That was his actual name, rather than me using it as a thing. For those of you who don't know, Dave became a thing on the channel for a while where bad people were called Dave in stories. I don't know why. Well, I do know why. It's because one of my original stories was about a guy called Dave who did something really, really nasty. And so it kind of stuck. People are trying to get away from that, which is kind of nice. It shows the cool community that I have. In that somebody wrote in because the Dave thing bothered him, you know? And he was ruthlessly, you know, chastised good-naturedly in the comments, you know what I mean? Utterly taken down a notch in the comments. But then, the same people who did that in the comments have sent in Hobby Nightmares where they've refrained from using Dave in a negative space, in a negative way, which I think is great. If we're a bunch of guys, most of us, we just rib the living hell out of each other for being awkward, and then We take on board what was said and we act on it accordingly. That's what a true friend does. If somebody said to me, like this, "Oh, Dave, really bothers me when you say the word Dave like that," I do it mercilessly. You know, or I take the piss out of him for it mercilessly, and then change my behaviour. Do you know what I mean? Good community, just saying. Anyway, Dave was a decent bloke who managed to keep a balance in his store. When the crackdown on gaming in the store came about, he asked all of the gamers to come in and told us right then and there that he would be in deep shit if gaming happened in his store. As such, since he was the only game in town, literally, he agreed to work with us if we agreed to keep our games small and to only play in the corner of the store to bring an atmosphere to the place. He put in a code of conduct, a dress code and hygiene standard for anybody wanting to play on the table in the store, and kept a notice behind the till for people to look at all times. Basically, you were limited to 1.5 thousand point battles on one 6x4 table. You had to be dressed properly in clean clothes and couldn't smell like a bear's arse. After all, he wanted games to be an advertisement for the games he was selling in the kids to the store. In the kids to the store. You haven't written that properly. He was selling to kids from the store and parents. We agreed, and our campaigns flourished in the store from then on. That's a really good workaround. That is a really, really, really good workaround. The shame is, Games Workshop have said for a long time now, games are not allowed in store, which is fair enough. It's their prerogative, it's their business, and there is a reason for that. The main reason for that is long-term. Right, okay. I'm gonna do a video on this tomorrow, so I don't really want to throw all my eggs out the window. What is going on with my voice? Throw all my eggs out the window? No, I don't want to throw all my eggs in one basket and then give it to you straight, you know what I mean? Because I want to save something for my video tomorrow. But the main reason why Games Workshop don't want you doing games in store is because long-time gamers and nerds are very frugal and intelligent with their money, and so they won't buy product in store. In other words, you have people in your store adding nothing to it, taking up all of your time and space, and giving you nothing in return. You can protest as much as you like. As someone who's run a Games Workshop, I can tell you, most of the people not buying stuff in my store were the regulars. Alright? They were great for getting other people into the store through being really happy and getting on with things, and being a really good advertisement for what we do in the store. But in terms of actually giving me money, a lot of them, weren't very good at that at all, right? They would go in, they would even buy their models on eBay and come in to play them in the store. It would just be, that kind of a thing. Or even worse, they would make an online purchase and get free postage to my store, come in, pick up their models, and play with them in the store. And I'd be like, yeah, cheers, mate. I saw none of that purchase. Thanks. Thank you. I saw none of that purchase. Even if I've asked you to come into the store and we'll make the purchase on the store computer, it makes no difference to you. You still pay with the same amount of money. You still get the same money off because it's to the store, right? But the only difference is I get it in my till rather than Games Workshop just getting it, right? And still, there were so many people who came into the store who didn't do it. Who were like, no, I'm not doing that. Fuck you. Right? I'm gonna order from my house. Then I'm going to come to your store and pick up the model. I literally said that to people, and I had 9 out of 10 people in that store didn't do it. When I said, listen guys, listen, every time you order stuff online and you pick it up from my store, no problem with that whatsoever. Thing is, I don't see any of that money. It doesn't go through my till, and so to Games Workshop, I've gotten you into the hobby, but they can't see it. They don't care, right? They just don't care. Because it doesn't go through my till. If you could, when you're in the store, make your purchase then on the tablet or on the computer, right? You pay the same money, it's the same thing, you're still getting it sent to the store, you're just ordering it at the store instead of at home, that's all. And then I will see the money. It goes through my till. I swear to you, 1 person in 10, that's a very reasonable request. 1 person in 10 did that. They saw it as too much of an inconvenience to actually do it. Do you know what I mean? So that's why too many regulars in your store means you're going to lose money and your store's going to die. It just is. It's a thing, guys. I'm sorry to say it, but it is a thing. Now, there is a definite balance to be found here. Games should happen in store. I completely disagree with managers when they tell me games shouldn't happen in store. I completely, respectfully disagree. Absolutely disagree. Games can and should happen in store. They should just happen at the behest of the manager, rather than the manager giving over his space to people who aren't going to keep a store open, right? Okay, cool. Anyway, we would work with Dave all of the time, and as a reward for sticking to his rules and ceasing all play when head office would come heading in to check on him, he ended up getting a load of terrain for us to build and keep store. Oh, sorry, my head today. I must have slept well or something. I'll read that entire bit again. We would work with Dave all of the time, and as a reward for sticking to his rules and seeking all play when head office would be heading in to check on him, he ended up getting a load of terrain for us to build and keep before pimping out the back gaming table. Whenever head office asked about the table, he told them that it was a, and I quote, diorama and advanced beginners table. Basically, anybody who advanced from the introduction table to come in for their first game later on, first game proper I mean, in learning the rules, would do so on this new table, and they would be given priority. They would play against either a trusted regular or the manager himself. This allowed Dave to get away with having games in the store for years after the hammer on games in stores had come down. This is how you do it, guys. This is how you do it. If you're a Games Workshop manager and you want games in your store, this is how you do it. You make games in your store be linked to the introduction games that you're meant to give in store. That's how you do it. That is how you do it. After several years, let me just do a quick anecdote. So, before I carry on. So, in my store, we had a campaign going on, and it was going on for quite a while. And everything in store, gaming-wise, happened on one world. On our store world, essentially, right? Because the tagline of Games Workshop at the time was, "Welcome to our worlds." So I took that pretty literally and said, okay, why don't I do a 40k world that represents the store? You know? That you come into the store, and you're playing on this world. Even if you play on the introduction table. When kids came in with their parents, I'd say, look, we're going to play an introduction table board. You know, you're going to play an introduction game. But don't for a second think that just because it's an introduction game, there's nothing at stake. There's tons at stake. And I'd show them the map of the world that we had. And there was even a beginner's corner in the world where introduction games were fought. And the world, that part of the map would change. You know? Death Guard or Space Marine, it would change on who won that game. And I would show them and say, look, whoever wins this game, it either stays this colour or changes to a different colour. You're making a contribution to the world. Okay? And if both players were good, if both players were nice lads or nice girls or whatever, right? If they were good, I would let that person change the colour on the map. Right, so like you won your Death Guard, so it changes from green, from blue to green. Go and stick this sticker over the blue, because you conquered that part of the map. And the lad would go over like, oh, brilliant, and he'd oh, yes, you know, and he'd come over in your face, you know, to his brother or whatever, or his friend or whatever, right? And I'd say, but the Space Marines did hold that objective that was on the board for a long time, so you, my friend, get to give orbital bombardments to one of the games going on in the store. Right? How cool is that? So, they would pick out a Space Marine player, they'd go, and the Space Marine player would be like, hey, lad, come over here, here. Can I have your orbital bombardment, please? Please. And he goes, yeah, sure. Alright, you can roll it for me. And we'd do it that way. And you'd link in the actual games in the store with the introduction games. Success came in Games Workshop when I took away all of the walls between introduction games and main games, right? When you compartmentalize your store, for me, that fails. It just fails. It fails all the time. Or, If it doesn't fail, you have a law of diminishing returns, because the kid's going to come in, play the introduction game, and then leave, because they're not a part of the wider hobby. If you allow them to be a part of the wider hobby, they play their introduction game with their brother or their friend that they brought in, or whatever, or against you, right? They get their reward, they get to change the thing on the campaign map, and they go and get to affect a game going on in the store at that moment. And if there's no game going on in store, I had a chart where I would say which side had how many orbital bombardments they had, and I would tick them off and put their name next to it. So you did that, and the lads will know that you did that when they use your orbital bombardment that comes in and helps them win the next battle, right? Now, that's something that everybody in the store just signed up to, because it's part of playing in my store. You are part of that campaign. No matter what game you're playing, you're part of that campaign. So every now and again, you would have an orbital bombardment dropped on you from the introduction table. It's just what happened, but people loved it, because it was a casual gaming sphere. It wasn't super competitive, and people really got involved with it. So if you take your younger people, your people you're recruiting into the hobby, and you move them from the introduction table where they're sequestered over there, and you give them a natural graduation towards the actual veterans part of the hobby, that's the best way to retain people in the hobby. You recruit them and you retain them. You don't recruit them and send them on their way so that they never touch their models and they gather dust. You recruit them and you retain them. That's what you do, Anyway, I'll carry on. After several years of this working and the store growing steadily, we were able to end up holding events for beginners so they could see the campaign we were making. It was a narrative campaign on a desert world that kind of looked like ancient Egypt if it was an entire planet in 40k. We would have craft Saturday afternoons where beginners would sit with us and make scenery and play small games on the big table, learning the rules and lore as they went, and gradually being absorbed into the wider hobby. Dave would give introductions on the temple ruin table at the front of the store, the small 4x4 introduction table that was front and centre when you came into the store. We would have our games at the back of the store, and the idea was that the new customer would work their way back from the introduction table to the painting introduction area, then to the beginners buying section where all the starter essentials were. Just beyond that, the craft and normal painting table, so at this last part of their first visit, they got to see the hobby in full swing, and what it looks like to do it with friends. We called this the Jurassic Park tour moment. Do you know that part in Jurassic Park where they go and they see the lab? Yeah, I think... Oh, you mean yeah, the Mr. DNA part. Yeah, I remember that. That's exactly what it was like. Right at the end of their tour of the store, at the end of their introduction to the hobby, they got to see what it was like firsthand, and they didn't have to jump in if they didn't want to. They got a friendly wave, a hello, and we carried on with our games. That was a system that apparently saw Dave's numbers of recruitment boxes sold skyrocket to the point he was getting phone calls from head office congratulating him and asking him how he was doing it. To be fair to him, to be fair to Dave, he was honest about it and told them he heavily curated who got to play in the store and when, which was true. There were a few bad situations where he had to turn people away who raged when gaming or had really poor body hygiene. He would always give warnings before revoking someone's privileges to game in the store, to be honest, and those he did ask not to play in the store had taken the piss out of his good nature to get to that point. I mean, asking a guy not to smell like a gone-off butcher's shop when in your store is not a big ask, at all. If you don't believe that, you are clearly an entitled asshole who has never been told the word no by your parents. Asking people to be courteous is not controversial in your place of business. Grow up. Okay, you're obviously speaking from experience of making this point as to a nerd. And he's gone, oh no, that's not right, you shouldn't be saying that to me in the store. I should be able to smell like a wet fart if I want to. No, you shouldn't. You shouldn't. And, this comes from one of your champions, dude. I'm one of the guys who will sit there and go to bat for you and will help you going to the gym, being better. That I will be that friend. I am that friend. Okay? Or at least I'll try to be. I'm always on your side, but still, you're wrong. Alright? A manager's place of business is not just his place of business, it's where he is all day, dude. How fucking dare you turn up smelling like shit? Right? That is the most uncourteous Neanderthal way to live. Don't do that. We have showers, use them. Use them. You know? And if you're homeless or you're struggling to get a shower, I think playing with toy soldiers is the least of your worries right now. Get that shit sorted out and then come back to the store. Right? That's what I would say. Okay? And it's very rare. That situation is beyond rare. I would say as a Games Workshop manager of 25 years, like if you are one of those managers, I would say you've come across that situation maybe once. Maybe once. In your entire career. Alright? It's that rare. Normally, people who smell in a store are just people who are lazy. I'm sorry, it has to be said. People who do that in a store, most of the time, are lazy. They couldn't be arsed getting a shower, and they've let their bodies go. They don't give a shit about how they look anymore. They're just, yeah, lazy or have some sort of mental issue going on. Or a combination of both, right? Clear communication is the key. Make sure you tell these people, look, that's not acceptable. Here's what is acceptable. You're not meeting that standard. You need to go and meet that standard or you can't play in the store. There's nothing wrong with that. There's nothing wrong with having a standard in your store on cleanliness and hygiene. I've known people who are badly autistic who smelt just fine. Thank you very much. Right? Your mental issues are not an excuse. They're not. I've known people with crippling autism. I mean, really, really bad. You know? Asperger's, the lot, man. The lot. And they've been fine. They've been completely fine. You know? Because they look at the store like they're Fight Club. Remember in Fight Club when they get dressed up and they make sure that they're looking good to go to Fight Club, right? That's how they looked at my store. It was like they looked at it as this is my thing. So I'm going to look good and smell nice. I'm going to feel nice when I go to the store, right? As long as you put it in those terms, no one's going to get offended. Now, don't be an arsehole about it. You know, be nice about it. But, you know, there are standards, and it's not wrong to have standards at your store. Especially when you're there for, like, upwards of 10 hours a day. I mean, God's sake, man. Eventually, Dave left Games Workshop to head back to university in his late 20s. I think he went into teaching at said university in the end, so it was a good fit for him. His replacement, Chris, was the subject of this very nightmare. And oh boy, did Chris hate gaming in the store. The thing was, he could not deny it worked wonders for his recruitment numbers. After a few months of him being there and things generally going alright, he came back from a training weekend in Nottingham a changed man. All of a sudden, gaming was the pariah in the store, and Chris would shorten the big gaming table at the back to a 4x4 table before confiscating all of the terrain, which he said was store property, despite Dave giving us the terrain years ago. He insisted that we use our own. That right there turned a lot of people off, and they left the gaming part of the store in droves. Since then, he removed all introduction parts of the store to a different part of the store to separate them from gaming. So the veterans were on one side of the store and all of the introduction people were on the other side of the store. And he only curated the introduction side and kept us off in our own little compartment. The boiling point for me didn't come until a few months later. I am at the gaming table playing a small 500-point game against some custodies with my Night Lords. Fair enough. What's happened here, by the way, guys, is somebody at head office has gotten a hold of this guy and told him gaming shouldn't happen in your store. At all. They've gotten a hold of him. And they've basically told him what he wants to hear. And he's come in to nuke the entire thing. Now, I have several squads of raptors that look a little bit different because I have them posed differently. using green stuff to really make them look like they are falling down from the sky. Chris comes over with a lot of fake contrition on his face and shakes his head, drying his teeth like, ah. He says, "Yeah, sorry pal, you can't play with the army." I laugh, expecting him to make a quip about Night Lords and then to tell me to get on with my day. The normal hobby banter, you know? I look at him and he's being serious. What? I ask. He points to my raptors and says, "Store policy is that all of your models should be built to box art standard. They need to at least look like the models I sell in store." "That's utterly ridiculous," I said. "When did you make up that rule?" "That doesn't matter," he says. "That's the rule. I give you guys a lot of grace to play games in the store as it is, but you are to serve as an advertisement for the hobby. You can't do that if you don't even play with the models that I sell here in store." "But you do sell these here," I said. "The raptors are over there," I said, pointing to them on the shelf, "and the green stuff is over there," I said, pointing to the green stuff on the shelf nearby. "Everything that makes up these models was bought right here. I built these models right here." He shrugged. "I've told you the rules, man. It's up to you if you want to die on that hill." Wow. At this point, I just packed up my models and apologised to my opponent before reorganising our game for a later date at my house, before heading out. I told Chris, quietly, away from other customers, that he'd never be seeing me or my gaming group in the store again, that he'd driven us off, and I wished him well with his store. He didn't reply, he just kept checking the stock levels of the paints. Our gaming group ended up meeting at my new place in the garage, where we built a new gaming table and hosted a Saturday get-together with beers and other bits and pieces. We now have a really good group of guys, and we made a brand new campaign. The store is still there, but is generally quite empty. There is no system of recruitment in there from what I can tell. It's just Chris desperately dry humping customers to buy Space Marines or do an introduction game with him. Sigh. Cheers, North, Bob. That sucks. That really, really, really sucks. There was a really cool comment on a video I did previously, and it said, "Once again, the manager had this well in hand, right? But this time we lost a good manager, and it was replaced with a Jobsworth manager who was eventually told from head office what he wanted to hear. That is, get all games out of your store. If you go from one to the other, you may make decent money in your store, but it will never grow. I'm telling you now. You may make decent money in your store, but it's never going to grow. Not like it could if you married the two together. You know? Marry the two together and watch your store explode. Not literally. Right? Marry the two together. Marry your veterans to your introduction tables. Marry them together. Have a clear signage of you start here and you end up here. Because you're proud of the people in your store, because you've cultivated a really good store atmosphere with really good people playing the games in your store. That's what you do. That's what you do. You curate the store you want. You don't just ostracize one half of the hobby. What are we doing at Games Workshop? What are we doing if we tell you can't play the games in the store? We're literally disregarding upwards of 50% of the entire hobby. It's ridiculous and stupid, and you shouldn't do it. Okay? Now, again, within reason. Don't let gaming take over your store. Don't let the veterans take over your store and use it as their own personal youth club. Don't do that. Okay? I know from experience, the money dries up, mate. The money dries up. Okay? You curate a good group of veterans who are good at the games, who are good ambassadors for the hobby. You then recruit, and recruit some more. But make sure that they know that eventually that's what awaits them in the future. fun with massive armies on bigger, more impressive gaming tables. Marry the two together and watch your recruitment numbers go through the roof. Alright? Alright. I love you a long time. I will speak to you tomorrow where we will do a video specifically on this phenomenon. And we will answer the question, should Games Workshop even let you play games in the store? Because, I'm telling you now, there is a point for and against. There are several points for and against. It's not going to be a be-all, end-all sort of a thing. I'm not going to be sitting here saying, yes, they should, and end. No, there are very good points to not let games be played in your store. And we're going to go over them tomorrow, alright? Alright. Love you a long time. I'll see you tomorrow. Have a wonderful rest of your day. Have a good one. Bye now.